at least you're admitting it is going to be a difficult call. It's not automatic that he will be a Cowboy in 2014.
No, it is not. And there's no question when you are where we are on the cap, even though we've had some new cap space added, when you're where we are under the cap and you have a defensive player that's your highest paid defensive player and he hasn't been on the field much the last 2 years, then that has to be considered.
Well, the other thing to consider as you look at his decrease in production in the last couple of years is that this last year he actually played defensive end in a 4-3 instead of outside linebacker in a 3-4. He led the league in sacks in 2010, then had 19.5 in 2011, but he has only 17.5 sacks in the last 2 seasons combined, and he played a career-low 13 games last season. But let's be clear, 13 games, that was the first 3 games he's ever missed in his NFL career. Then there's Jason Peters. He came into the NFL as a tight end in Buffalo. Got a $5,000 signing bonus. He's better as a left tackle. He just signed one with Philadelphia, a new deal, 5 years, $51.3 million, $19.55 guaranteed. Ching! Yeah, although really that's just $9 million more money. He was going to make $10 million anyway. He'll retire as an Eagle. The point we're making could be lots of movement in the NFC East once free agency hits just inside of 2 weeks. Let's look at some notables for every team. The Eagles got decisions to make on Wiley Cooper and wideout Jeremy Maclin, both needing new deals. Then there's Michael Vick, also a free agent after starting 40 games during his last 5 seasons in Philly. As for the Giants, Hakeem Nicks is their most notable free agent after leading the team in receiving since 2009. Justin Tuck also needs a new contract. Has spent his first 9 seasons in New York, winning 2 Super Bowl titles. Talked about the Cowboys already with DeMarcus Ware. Then they've got other issues on the D-line. Jason Hatcher had a career-high 11 sacks in 2013, while Anthony Spencer missed most of last season with a knee injury, but has spent his entire career in Dallas, been really up and down as a first-round pick. Redskins' biggest free agent priority is outside linebacker Brian Orakpo. Had 10 sacks last season, the second most in his career, has 39.5 sacks since 2009. Now, the Redskins currently have the most cap space of any team in the division, $27 million to spend. The Eagles are next, followed by the Giants, who have $16 million in cap space. And the Cowboys are currently more than $20 million over the cap, the worst salary cap situation of any team in the league. And remember, as we look at these teams and go forward, both the Cowboys and the Redskins have been dealing with cap penalties over the last couple of years, but coming out of it now, it certainly seems like the Redskins are in much better shape than the Cowboys in terms of how they're going to manage the cap, which should be about $132 million when it's all said and done. So let's go team by team. Herm, starting with you. Obviously, the biggest priority for the Redskins overall is getting RG3 back to the 2012 version of RG3. But in free agency, what should be their main priority?
They've got to look at some offensive linemen. They can do that in free agency as well as the draft. 43 sacks. That's too many sacks for a young quarterback. They got to get his confidence back. So they got to find a way to protect Robert Griffin. It starts right there up front. And they struggled all last year trying to protect the quarterback. And Robert Griffin obviously turned the ball over way too many times. They got hit a lot. So they can find a way in free agency as well as the draft, because this is a good draft for offensive linemen. So they sit in a pretty good spot. Now, here again, Trey, they do not have a first-round pick. So that's an issue. So there where free agency might step in on
that first-round pick, of course, now to the St. Louis Rams, who sit number 2, and suddenly they're very happy with that trade they made a couple of years ago. Ryan, the Cowboys repetitively average over the last 3 years, 8-8, 8-8, 8-8.
Consistent, though.
It's important to be consistent. We'll have more on that later on this edition of NFL Live. But what do you think they can do or should do considering their cap situation?
Well, first of all, we had to get under the cap.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, we're $21 million over the cap. So you have to figure out a way to get under the cap, which might include releasing DeMarcus Ware. And you're already going to lose. There's 2 guys up front and Spencer and Hatcher who are also going to be free agents. But this team needs to be shored up the middle. Listen, Sean Lee is a very good inside linebacker, but he's the guy who's faced some injuries. I think they need to build up at safety. You had Barry Church, who played pretty well last year, but you had 2 young guys in Heath and Wilcox, who you were kind of shuffling in and out. One is an undrafted guy in Heath, and Wilcox was a 3rd-round guy who never really got to playing the ball they expected him to play. There's a lot of good free safeties on the market, and safeties in general on the market. There's T.J. Ward, there's Jarius Byrd, guys who can come in and make plays, Dante Whitner. But can you free up enough money to go out and get one of these guys to pair back there and maybe kind of bring those young guys along until they can be the guy that you trust at safety?
In other words, it sounds like really the biggest thing for them in free agency is not worrying about free agency, but developing through the draft, which has been a problem for the Cowboys the last few years. Brian, what about your old team, the Philadelphia Eagles?
It will be on the defensive side of the ball, and particularly in the back end of it. I was talking about the outside linebackers, and especially the secondary. I think that they have to do a better job. I think they were close to the bottom, if not the worst in the league as far as passes yards given up. So you have to do a better job of getting off the football field, stopping the pass, and not only that, turning the ball over. They only had one guy, in my opinion, Brandon Borkins, in the secondary that can get interceptions and end games. They need to get more production out of especially the safety position. I think the cornerbacks were decent. They were solid. But the safety position, you have to have more. You have to have a safety in the middle of the field that a team has to game plan for. Right now, I don't think they have that. They didn't have that last year.
All right, we'll see what happens going forward in year 2 under Chip Kelly. And that leads us to the Giants.
Oh, boy.
Every year, it seems like they have a million things to do. Most of the times, they figure out a way to get it done. Not this past year.
Well, Eli Manning's not the most mobile quarterback. We just talked about Johnny Little Football. He can run around. Eli Manning likes in the pocket. Problem is they can't protect him.
Right.
They got to do something with the offensive line. It's been a turnstile there. The running game also, this hampers this offense. And, you know, you think about some of the guys that are going to be missing. David Deal is not going to probably be there anymore. So they've got to do something to protect Eli Manning. We know when he's upright, he's a very good quarterback. 27 interceptions. That's way too many. Why? He's falling off his back foot half of the time.
Led the league.
And so that's not a good number. So offensive line, I think, when you look at the Giants, Tom Coughlin's about running the football, play action pass, and you got to do that. It starts with the guys up front.
Well, listen, there's 2 ways to look at that. 27 interceptions, led the league. The last time Eli did that, the next year they went on to win the Super Bowl.
Oh. It's the setup.
But then there's this one. The Giants have had a losing record for the first time since 2004. They've only had back-to-back losing seasons twice in the last 25 years. So all signs, if you're a Giants fan, indicate it probably will be a turnaround year in 2014. Lots more coming here on this edition of NFL Live. Let's be fair to both Easts. We'll take a look